Welcome to Cybersecurity Today, the weekend edition. My guest today is Rob T. Lee. He's the Chief AI Officer and Chief of Research at the SANS Institute. Now, Rob has a unique view, being at the intersection of education, deployment, and security as it relates to artificial intelligence. And it's something, if you follow Cybersecurity Today, you've been hearing the stories. Now, for those of you who might not, let me preface this. I'm neither an AI apologist, nor am I an opponent of AI. I think what I am is a realist and a pragmatist. And AI, in my never humble opinion, is unstoppable. It offers too much in the way of potential benefits, but AI also, in my opinion, represents one of the greatest threats to our systems and infrastructure. And I would argue that as an IT person, I think it's fundamentally insecure. Not because security is impossible, but because, like so many other technological advancements, no matter what we say, we always do the security should be built in, not bolted on. And then we run away and build something. And in a transformational technology, we do it twice as hard. So we add that level of risk. Now, there's a second level of risk. And that's like any other transformational technology. Cloud, SaaS, mobility. These are driven by a business desire for results. And like cloud, SaaS, and mobility, when business desire conflicts with security, security takes second place. It's the way it's always been. If you resist, the business will either steamroller over you, or they'll subvert the rules and bring it about surreptitiously. Now, there may be some businesses that are so highly regulated that those who manage risk may have the upper hand, and all the best to you. I wish we had that job, but most of us don't. And I don't want to be flip about this. Business leaders are rewarded for business success, not for the risks they avoid. And so I may also be a little cynical, but business leadership isn't always ready to jump down and fall on their sword when there's a mistake, especially when it involves things like technology and cybersecurity failures. But that cynicism, like my understanding of business, comes from experience. I've been a product executive and a technology executive. I've lived the need to show results. I've been to the meetings where there's been a failure or a crisis. And as one of the characters in my new book says, if you can't spot the scapegoat, you're it. So again, I say this not to be flip, but to really point out the difficulty of those who have to manage this risk of AI and those who must try to introduce the dreaded G word, governance. These people need the wisdom of Solomon and the courage of David. So I'm glad to invite Rob in for a conversation on this, not to provide you with all the answers, but to start a dialogue that might help point us in the right direction. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, thank you. I'm fascinated. Can I find out about your book? It sounds
I
like the term. Can't figure out the scapegoat. It's likely you, or I think that's what you said.
Yeah, no, the book is about a failed IT guy who encounters an artificial intelligence. So it's there's a bit too much of my own corporate career in there.
Yeah.
But before we get started, let's talk about SANS and your role there, and then we'll get back to the subject at hand.
So I've been with SANS for a long time, but I, like most of the instructors, you're a practitioner. And while I was started at SANS back when I was 24 years old, so this is like decades ago now, I was working in the AFOSI at that point, and I worked offensive operations and malware development and discovery, vulnerability discovery for about 5 years, doing stuff, for various people. And then went over to Mandiant, was at Mandiant doing incident response, director over there, helped, wrote the initial entrance report, coupled them, that ever came out, and then also really helped spearhead the cyber threat intelligence capabilities that they did. Along the lines of SANS, wrote and developed their initial incident response curriculum, and I used that as a test bed for a lot of capabilities and ideas that became industry known. I came on board full-time at SANS about 4 years ago, running their content and curriculum. And now I'm actually gotten back to my roots, working on our research and focusing on AI and business, not only AI from cybersecurity, from business transformation. I've been a part of multiple startups, have consulted hundreds of companies, and went to Georgetown and got my MBA there. So I have a massive background in the business side, and applying that to technology, I think is even more prescient today than it's ever been, because you're dealing with new technologies that are fundamentally fantastic and almost magical, to the point where we also need to take a look at how do we secure it.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. You said this two things in my question, because that was what I thought SANS was about, was it was a lot of practitioners who were doing a lot of the teaching, and which is so important.
I don't know a single full-time academic that SANS has. They're all in the field doing stuff, working for other organizations, consulting on their own. And then they come and teach. It's like you want Navy SEALs to be taught by people that were in combat. This is kind of the same thing. No, we're not Navy SEALs. That's a bad analogy. That's like another level. But again, you actually want that level of experience, other than you feel like if this person never, had a single bullet shot at them. And, that's that experience to come in here. Here's real world practical advice, technical skills, and then here's what it's going to look like next week for you.
Yeah, and I'm always careful not to dump on academics, because although they've had my share being dumped on. I taught at one of our best universities, and I look at people who I know had never done any of this in the real world, who are looking at me saying, "Well, you're not academic enough." And I'm going, "Well, you're not practical enough." But I think the really good research has real value.
Yeah.
Really good practical experience has real value, but we're all after results. And so
I think you're being too nice. I mean, most we dovetail on this pretty quick. But again, it shows even what just happened at Starbucks. Their previous CEO, the company was like 180 billion, not 80 billion, like 150, whatever it was. And then that CEO came in and the value went down by 40%. And then just by hiring the former CEO, I think it was Chipotle, and he turned around on these businesses, his stock valuation went up. But that's someone who's been there in the fight doing it, versus I believe the former CEO was more of a theoretical. You need someone looking at both, because someone who's in the fight can't look horizon view to do research on what's coming next.
I'm always careful to say research, not theoretical. Like, we're not physicists, but getting good data is something that I don't think we do well as an industry. And I respect the people who get good data and help us work with good data.
100%.
When I was taking my degree, I had two profs who were both business people. One of them ran a franchise, and he took us in it. And you know what I learned from him? If you run a franchise, you know the cost of a cup. And if you don't know the cost of a cup, don't run a franchise.
Yeah.
You're not going to die on $10,000. You're going to die on 0.5 cents, like that's, and he was just eye-opening. And the same thing in tech. We had one guy who was, I don't know what he did, but he took us down to the lab, and we were seeing the first computers there in the university lab, and we started to play with them. And, that magic. And I think that's one of the things I think that maybe we love the practical, but it's the magic of doing things, and as much as my intro was about the tension between security and business, the reality is my friend John Thorpe was a great speaker one time, used to say, "Put your hand up. How many of you were from IT?" And people would put their hand up. He said, "How many of you from the business?" And people put their hand up. He said, "Nonsense. You're all from the business." Yeah. Anyway, back to our topic at hand. What'd you think of the intro? Is that the situation you see, or do you see it differently?
Wow. Such a great question. I think security in general is running into a very fascinating schism between business interest, where we're headed in terms of the application of a new technology, and how is security being asked to wrestle with these things. So being exposed to a lot of different parts of the organization. I was at AI4 recently, and I ended up creating, and I think they called them roundtables. What it was is 40 people who are non-cybersecurity people. I said, I'm going to lead this roundtable on concerns and risks surrounding AI inside your organization. How do you potentially think about it, you as business leads at various parts of the organization? What was interesting about this, I was all expecting, I had kind of a beat questions I want to ask folks to get conversations started, because we're all sitting in this massive circle, about 40 of us. And we had folks from financial, International Monetary Fund, USAA, Audi, you name it. Their business, military was in there, everyone. It wasn't that they're worried about getting hacked. through AI or adversary techniques and prompt injection and all the cool and various terms that people are using. The one thing that they said is the business trust, the one thing, top, like 90% is shadow AI. And that got me thinking, and it's like, I'm trying to tie a couple knots together here. And I took a lot of notes during that, a lot of them. And I said, I think people are having a hard time in cybersecurity because there are three balls that you need to somehow juggle simultaneously. And going back to some of the beats that you said, I'll start with the last one. Is the hardest one that you mentioned earlier is governance. You need to somehow have a policy and a framework that is applicable inside your organization. Second one is you and your security teams with what you're doing here on the media side, but also your technical skills in finance and HR and product and sales and every part of the organization is being asked to start utilizing this technology. We don't know how exactly. Go do some experimentations and how to utilize. Security team is no different. Become a more advanced, superhuman powered stock analyst, incident response, offensive operator, you name it on a team is like, you're supposed to use this magical interface and be able to accelerate your capabilities. So we have govern, utilize. Oh, by the way, security teams also asked somehow figure out everyone is using these magical technical capabilities here. How do we make sure that those things are safe for the organization? We need you to protect those. And by the way, we're going to build our own internal AI capabilities that are going to serve our customers too. So we have three things that are just suddenly dropped in the organization, customer facing stuff, who your clients are, what you're doing, your business services, product. You have your company and your people that are starting to use these tools for their own workloads, protect that, make sure nothing bad's going to happen there. So you have the protect side. And suddenly security is faced a problem it's never had before. You need to simultaneously have answers for what is our governance? By the way, you need to use it, figure that out. And by the way, you need to protect everyone else while you're doing all these other things. And it's created a little bit of a meltdown in our industry because of that issue. And I come back to what that meltdown is, but I just want to pause. Like, do you see this? I mean, my FI filter, are these,
No,
is
no,
there,
I think
there are two?
one of the things that I would have suggested is we should kill the word governance.
Oh,
We
yeah.
should talk about how shit gets done or how things get done and who's responsible, because we've lost it in a pretty word. And
Yes.
I think we tend to do this in IT. We blame marketing for having their term. We have our own terms and people go, governance, what's that? It's the reality of how we know.
No, you're using GRC. You're in a presentation, well, GRC. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like people using agentic, or generative AI. They're putting these, I'm like, okay, I hate the word agent and agentic. The same thing, but it's no longer governance. They just like, oh, the GRC, and that you're exactly right. It's like that word, those words tend to cause me to like, okay, are we going to have I'll just say like the drinking game. Everyone said every time someone says a cybersecurity personnel, GRC, okay, everyone, what to do right now?
Tequila. Yeah. But I think that's part of the problem. So let's talk about governance. Let's break that down while we're talking about it. What is it that governance means that we should be talking about?
In very simple terms, being able to align the business to its business needs, be able to let the business be innovative, let the business flourish. It's kind of like, okay, take away the business. It's kind of like letting your kids be kids so they could learn, so they could develop grit, that every now and then they'll fall down and have to have that pain that hits. But you don't want it to just be like, hey, you're riding a bike with no helmet. You still need like basic things and wrappers around the business, your kids, anything else. You want them to flourish. You want them to learn. You want them to be the best they could possibly be. Security's job in governance is to create that bicycle helmet that creates and reduces and implements safety and risk reduction. Security done properly with proper governance is going to enable the business in the perfect world. So when you think about governance, instead of thinking about restrictions, it needs to be considered enablement safely.
I think your bike example is a great one. There are rules of the road. There are things you do, things you don't do. You don't go whipping through an intersection without looking. You make sure you wear a helmet. If we want our kids to be safe, we teach them the rules so that they can play. I think it's a great
Exactly.
example. And I think that's what we've lost in governance is the sense of the practicality of these are the things we need to do. You know,
Well, it's the same thing with the police officers. Police officers basically should allow you to leave your home and to walk safely down the street with your kids, to do things that it's like enablement. In other cases, we end up saying the police is meant to contain, constrict, to limit. But if done right, it is not thinking that way. As the police officers like to be in an area, it's like, I'm creating the ability for this neighborhood to be the best neighborhood it could be, and neighbors feel safe, could know if anything ever happens. That's what security teams kind of sometimes lose. There's this, we're in charge of things. We can now restrict. We can not think of ourselves as enabling folks safely. It is more of a, oh, we're policing things. And that's where I think a lot of security teams, it depends on how their mentorship, how leadership, this is so why so much the leadership and the CISO is critical decision hiring to understand that. Is that's why they're now a C-level position and not just like three rungs down, is a CISO needs to return to, like, CTO enables the technology, CISOs enables the business in a safe manner.
and I think that, again, a good analogy, you call balls and strikes, you call, I mean, if you get pulled over by a cop, they tell you you're doing 120 and this Canadian in a 100 zone or, you know, whatever that turns into in miles.
You're kilometers per hour.
extremely-
We're like, man, what? Those Canadians, they're out of control.
Yeah. I had an American friend, he came over and said, 100? That's your speed limit.
Exactly.
No, but if you just call it as you see it, this
Yeah.
is, you know, you're doing 120 and 100 zone or, you know, whatever, you're exceeding the limit. That's it. Now, what the business does about that, I think in many cases people may get frustrated, but we're just telling we're calling it like we see it. I think that's
Yeah.
a really a good analogy. You don't have to be a judge. And I think, you know, you don't have to be moral about it. We're not trying to make people better people. We're trying to make them into people who understand that there are ways in which we have to operate as a business.
Mhm.
Good idea. But so where does that fit with AI? Why is AI governance such a problem?
Where do I begin? Because it could be like a 20-minute, like, Rob on a soapbox thing. So I'll cut this into pieces. AI comes in and, you know, let me start from my own vulnerable concept here. So I've been working in this field for, let's say, before AI entered, 23 years. And when I started, there was no books. I was assigned to the first information operations, information warfare is what we called it back then, unit. And they basically hired, you know, what they thought was, you know, maybe they still do, you know, 30 extremely talented individuals to say, hey, go defend 9th Air Force bases from hackers. This is like a year after DEF CON started. You have to go back in this early stages. There's really no SANS. There's no training. There's nothing else. So I'm thinking everyone else in this room is like 10-year expert. They know all this stuff. No one knew that we're staring at this new technology. Windows 95 was a year old. No one knew what they were doing. And we're all trying to figure this stuff out. The reason I mention this is that the learning curve that I was on at that point, it's not that we knew what the target was. All I have to do is get from here to here. We didn't even know what to do. We didn't know how to go to a couch potato. We didn't even know we were going to be training to run a marathon. The marathon didn't exist at that point. The 10K did not exist. We just knew, hey, we needed to move off of the couch. And we had to figure this stuff out, not just us, but multiple different groups around the planet. I kind of look at this as a very similar analogy, is that anyone who would get up on stage and say, here's how to secure AI. They are guessing as much as I was guessing, and I was trying not to let anyone else in the room know. So fast forward today, 2 years ago, AI comes out, and I'm looking at this like, oh, technology is just like another piece of technology. All I have to do is stare at it, figure it out, tinker with it. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's just like this, but different. This is as different as Gandalf sitting in the court of any random king that's out there. He's the wizard, comes in, I know magic. I've been doing magic for 25 years. I've mastered magic. And again, for me, I have mastered digital forensics. I have all these skills. I look back on, I'm like, wow, I can speak with authority on these things. Suddenly, someone, Da Vinci, comes in the room, says, I have science. Gandalf looks at that and says, oh, that's very similar to magic. It does things that people who are affected by it don't quite understand. Very similarly, that kind of looks like magic, and science does cool things. But Gandalf looks at it and says, okay, I'm going to go attempt science because I'm really smart and I'm really good at magic. And there's no adoption. There's no true understanding. You have to go back to the beginning and say, how do I read again in kindergarten? So how do I potentially move my skills forward? From a personal aspect, people turn to me immediately and say, Rob, how do we secure AI? And it took me a while to get back to this vulnerable position because I was really trying to maintain my authority and expertise on this stuff. And I'd come back and say, I am learning right now. And I thought everyone else was very similar to what happened 25 years ago. I just thought more people had this. And about a year in, I realized no one really understood what was going on. So I had a theory, and I tested the theory first at OWASP, a Snowfrock in Denver. I have this presentation today and I'm still giving it. And I have people in the audience feel like I'm piercing their head directly like a Vulcan mind meld because I asked them a question, go through how significant this technology is. We have experts who are able to talk about the effects of this. They're able to talk about the legal ramifications of this. They're able to be in the room with leaders to be able to speak intelligently about this because your role in this is so significant. People's lives depend on you getting this right. Your business existence depends on getting this right. Next slide. How many of you, and I said, first, I don't get to that slide first. I want everyone to close your eyes and just sit in the moment. Do not peek. You're going to ask a question based on that question, just like I was vulnerable to you. And I raised my hand on this too. It's like, I'm learning, I'm struggling. I do not know the answers in AI. But then I turned it on them. And the question I asked was, how many of you are faking it with your current knowledge about AI and ML technologies? 80% of the 300 people in the room, 80% of the hands went up. And I'm like, in the back of my mind was like, okay, this is more telling than anything else I could have said. I said, now open your eyes and look around. And you could feel the pin drop in the room. And they're like, oh, good Lord. That's the issue with AI is the businesses are turning to security teams and they're saying, hey, we've hired you. You're a very expensive person. You should know technology. Well, they're not even admitting they have not mastered this technology yet. But the business is asking them, what do we do? And this is where I call it a crisis. And again, it feels like I'm pointing fingers. A crisis of competency. And you can put quotes around that, where we have a security team that doesn't really understand technology. So their initial gut reaction to solve this issue is to say, what YouTube videos, what training, what is the frameworks, what is the applicable thing? There's got to be some documentation. They come to SANS, say, SANS, train us. And we're struggling with this too. It's like, what are the things we need to do to potentially help people secure their organizations? Everyone's kind of looking at each other like it was 1996 again. There are no books. There is no training. We are asking you to get off the couch. But the business is asking, going back to the governance and everything else, we need to innovate to remain competitive. We need to make sure we're here. You need to learn AI. And by the way, security teams, you need to figure out governance. You need to figure out how to use it. And you need to figure out simultaneously how to protect everyone. And they're asking Gandalf, who's used to be seen as the magician of the court for 25 years, to look at science and speak intelligently about it without having done the homework yet to go through those learning cycles as to what does this stuff mean. And there are no books that have figured all this stuff out. So this is the issue. This is the thing that I wake up, that trims the power of type B.
I think it's fair. I would have flipped the analogy because I think we went from science to magic. Because
Yes.
back in the early days when we were all trying to figure this out, you could go back. This is a binary instrument. It's a yes or a no. It's a 1 or a 0 somewhere
Yes.
back in there, whether you're talking in hex, whether you talk, whatever. I can come back to something and I can replicate it. For the first time in a technology, I have a technology that I cannot understand. People talk about quantum. The best quantum physicists say, if you say you understand quantum physics, you're not a quantum physicist.
Right.
And I feel the same way about AI. If you say you understand what's happening there, you don't understand it.
Well,
First of all, an AI will never give you the same answer twice.
Yeah. And businesses, the executives don't know the difference between science and magic. To them, it just looks similar. Hey, this new tech stack, this is what we've always done. Cloud, you see all these iterations. Gandalf, what do we do? And Gandalf is used to be able to answer those questions. And now it's Gandalf. And this is, again, what's really interesting here is Sands is sending up chief AIO. It's like, Rob, you have all the answers, everything. The reason I'm here, I'll just be quite honest, is because I'm expressing vulnerability of my own lack of knowledge. And I'm encouraging everyone out there is like, you need to be like what I'm doing. And I have a mantra now that I said, in order to be healthy today is you need to get proper sleep. You need to eat a proper diet. If you don't sleep, it doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't, you get nothing out of that. You have to sleep, eat well, exercise. Every day you do your workout, push-ups, whatever you do, walk for 30 minutes. You have to do AI for 30 minutes. It is going back to the basics. And this is what I do. Now, within 30 days, it looks like, wow, you have started to master this. You've gotten in shape. We could see like, there's a massive change in you. And that's true because anyone who's not doing the work feels further and further behind, even on this stuff. And I'm looking at it from just how do you use it? Let me look at how to protect it. What are the things I could do? But I chip away at it on a daily basis. And I'm expressing, I'm like, okay, I'm now nascent. I'm now the newbie. And I have to remember, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I have to put myself back like I'm 20 years old again. Have to learn and start the raw math, then use the calculator. Then you're building up your skills. 30 days into this process, you walk out saying, wow, you actually know stuff. You're the expert. Rob, you're put on these podcasts. You're, super smart on this stuff. I'm like, no, I'm just doing the work. I need you to do the work. I need the entire community to do the work. Because if we're all not doing that work, what we're tasked to do is defending people's cybersecurity, because if what we do matters, we're saving lives. I need people to understand this. Like, I am depending on you and, Mr. Water, plant cybersecurity team. You have to do this work too. And we all need to do this as a community, realizing we're in the foxhole together, looking at each other, both scared, both trying to figure this out. But you look each other in the eye, like you and I are doing right now, saying, oh, there is no one coming to save us. We have to look at each other as like, all right, accountability partner. When I'm going through this on a daily basis, I will show you cool things. You show me cool things, and we'll now learn together.
What do you mean by that?
And again, this is where I don't know. I've landed on certain podcasts like the AI Daily Brief. I listened to this. What is going on across the industry? You learn about the AI action plan from the government. You end up getting exposed. Hey, Claude has a new capability. And I'll go, oh, what is that? I'll go on Claude and play around with it. I start to integrate workflows. Instead of, okay, I'm going to figure it out, I might read about something. Well, let me go see if I could just play with the thing and see what the impact is. And maybe even something related to my kids. My kids are 13-year-old twins, about to turn 14. The school is currently, it's called Cheat GPT, which is obvious reasons why. But I'm trying to look at it from how's my kids getting educated. So I can't do cybersecurity principles. I go into how do you use this creativity that is enabled through this technology. I was on the panel at the NASDAQ talking to boards, room full of people that are on boards. And I said, on the panel, everyone's like, we need your AI expert. That's all that's going to inform the board. And I said, who was that person? Like, I totally disagree with that assessment. And everyone's like, whoa, no, this is brand new. It's so hard. We need the new Gandalf. That's going to inform the board. I said, no, every single one of you needs to learn this. And I used my iPhone. I took a picture. I said, I'm going to be talking while I'm doing this. Take a picture. AI changes this picture into making it look like K-pop demon hunters, whatever current thing is. And while we're sitting there talking about this, I have the picture on come out. And I said, hey, that looks like a magic trick. But from an executive perspective, you might be doing this and saying, oh, geez, I'm doing the level of graphics designers in my own hand. And I see we have a hiring need for 3 graphics designers in our marketing department. I'm going to ask the dumb questions because I'm an executive. I'm just learning the technology, but how many of our current team are using these newer technologies to increase their capabilities for the graphic design so we don't need to invest? I said, that is why you as an executive need to understand this, not at a DNA level. How do the models work? Which Hugging Face thing are you? No. You need to be the person that's sitting in the people that came up with Netflix streaming. So what we should do, we should stream this because there's this thing called the internet. I guarantee the person came up with that idea and whiteboarded it didn't know how TCP/IP worked. They just said, they connected the dots saying, hey, I'm doing this thing on the web. Bandwidth is increasing. I'm watching this videos that people are distributing over here. Can we do movies this way.
Yeah.
And this idea is like same thing with Wi-Fi and Starbucks. None of those people were technologists, but they had a fundamental understanding of the technological shift that was going on to ask new business ideas and to drive innovation. So they start seeing these technologies. I said, if you outsource that, you and your business are at risk. You need to be the person and sitting in 1998, starting to use email, the browser, hitting websites, saying, but if you're being asked to change your business in the middle of the introduction of the internet and you never used a web browser or email, guess what? There's no way you're going to be able to do business strategy. And if you're leaning on an AI expert or internet expert, hand them the reins of the company at that point and you step down because you are effectively not useful anymore. The board, executives need to put in the work too, start playing with it. Everyone needs to start playing with it. And that's the hard
I think
part.
that's the essence of, and it would be the same advice I would give to people is now people say, oh, well, I've got to jump on board with AI. You don't have to jump on board with AI and integrate it with your business or get rid of 4,000 people. You have to start playing with it. I think I would maintain that if executives aren't trying this stuff out, you really are going to miss the understanding of what it's like.
At levels.
In the organization, people need to understand the possibilities. That's the phase we're in. And I think people miss that. They're rushing to say, I got to get this implemented. I got to save some. That's a really dumb strategy.
So you want to see my next magic trick?
Absolutely.
Okay. So where we started, governance, we just went down to how important is AI from the business side. And we talked about earlier that the business needs are to remain innovative and governance is an enabler. So organizations are starting to realize, wow, this is going to be a needle mover for us. We can save on costs. We're not going to fire people. We haven't seen the data. No one's being laid off of it. Some will have switching and replacement. Yes. But organizations are going to say, hey, use the people we have, get them more AI enabled. We don't know what that looks like. And that's the other thing executives need to kind of tie the knot on. We don't know what that is. We just need a lot of people playing with things and creating ROI. So they turn to the security team and say, hey, how do we do that? We want to lean forward, but we want to reduce risk. Security team is used to be able to apply a framework to do 80% reduction of risk, whatever that is. But what the security teams need to lean in on and saying, oh, we should probably do things that are 10% reduction of risk. But because Gandalf is his feet over here saying, hey, you've been seen as a 25-year expert in this stuff. What should we do? You're trying to apply a framework that is going to completely reduce risk. It's the same issue legal teams run into is like, we are going to be starting to do business in Timbuktu, except we can't read their legal stuff because it's only word of mouth. We don't know what business impacts and issues we're going to have, liability issues we're going to have over there. So I don't think we should do business in Timbuktu. No. The other thing that security teams, they look at that, and they're also looking at this from independently. The only framework they have to apply to reduce AI risk for an organization. And everyone's like, what frameworks, Rob? What is the thing that everyone's using? I say, oh, it's a very simple framework. Everyone's heard of it. The framework of no. Period. They basically come in there and say, okay, we don't understand Claude or ChatGPT or data rails or perplexity. Someone may do something bad. We don't know what the risk is. We need to evaluate every tool. They form a committee. They come in there and someone says, I would like to use Claude. How do I do that? No, we don't know. We don't give us maybe Q3. We might have an answer for you. Maybe Q4. Months go by. And then the person asks, hey, what happened to the tool I asked about? Silence. I'm like, well, we said no, don't use it. We're still evaluating. And then meanwhile, they come in, how do we evaluate this? And we have no idea what's going on. There are a lot of teams out there that actually fully capable and have implemented this stuff very well. The exact problem security was trying to avoid was now created by security. Shadow AI is a result of legal and security, default no. Everyone's going to use it anyways because they're worried about their own jobs. They're worried about like, hey, I'm told to do this. There's also fascination, curiosity. All these things kind of add together. Guess what? The framework of no has created the exact security issue that everyone's actually worried about in that room. Shadow AI. That's it. They're hiding it. No one knows it. 4 weeks ago said, hey, I'm upload the financial spreadsheets and send it over to another financial analyst and the shared link in there. oops, who accidentally now shares that entire chat in a Google search URL. Oops. They had no idea. Well, how would you figure that out? And I've asked my peers, and it's like, okay, let's assume you're evaluating Grok. How would you have found that? You would just be like, oh, and all of a sudden you're staring at this. Okay, do we just ban Grok now? This is, again, like a knee-jerk reaction.
And in reality, it's never worked. I still remember the early days when people were talking about mobility things and would say, well, we've got to have our data secured. And then you go, wait a minute, they're having a board meeting and they've all got iPads. Anybody looked at the security on those? No. Anybody think that the documents our board has might be, I don't know, confidential? Oh, yeah, geez. So the fact is, if you don't get in there and try and cope with it, people are going to hide from you. And the biggest people hide from you are the executives and the management for the most part. But right now, the stats say that 40, 50, 60% of people, depending on what research you're looking at, are using AI and not admitting it.
Yeah. And then even if this were, like, I have all these things. It's like I need to write a paper on this, because what is the biggest ROI that has led to innovation in the company? Shadow AI, thank God it exists. Nothing the companies are implementing as a sunlit project, not all of them, but most, in that MIT report kind of highlighted 90% of organizations have not figured out ROI. But the report, honestly, I actually did write a Substack article. I said, MIT report, masterclass of missing the point. And again, I was like, in a little bit, I was out for a walk and I said, they're missing the point. And I'm like, oh, and I landed on that title. They focused in on the ROI of some projects. But what it also stated in there is that the biggest ROI was coming from shadow AI that 90% of the employees are using anyways, even though 40% are supposed to be using official AI capabilities that the company has made approved. Hey, so shadow AI is the actual thing that's driving innovation in the company. Shouldn't we be focusing in on how to encourage that? And cybersecurity teams need to figure out a ways, okay, we need this, like you said, the playing around thing, like I'm telling executives to do too. How do we move that from shadow AI into sunlight AI? And how do we potentially put enough of a wrapper so the kids are able to walk onto the playground and saying, hey, listen, I cannot fully protect you. I'm going to ask you to put on a helmet. And you still bad things may happen to you. We could reduce risk by 10%. Now you pass that back to the executives. Like, all I could do is put a helmet on you. Are we okay with that? And then hand that decision back to the executive saying, this is the best I could do because of my knowledge. No one else knows it. Gandalf science issue. You need to be upfront with this being vulnerable, the organization being vulnerable, but the executives need to do their job now, make hard decisions that could risk the entire organization. If they're not leaning forward hard enough into this new technological innovation, they reduce competitiveness inside their own space, whatever they're doing. And on the opposite side, if we don't have enough risk reduction, we also risk the business because bad things can happen there too. So you're walking down this tightrope as an executive more so than anything before. And you don't have 6 months to think about this. No, you actually are now saying you have 2 weeks to consider this. DeepSeek came out with a model that's 10x cheaper, whatever. Your IT teams comes in, we could save a bunch of costs. Look at all this power consumption costs. We're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. 10x savings when you're spending $100 million on it is sizable. And if you're saying, well, we spend 6 months staring at DeepSeek, the model we should now be using, whereas Amazon, Microsoft, GitHub, they all implemented the DeepSeek model within 5 days. Critical business decisions leaning forward, obviously saying security, we can't have that hold us back because of the cost. You're now the executive, do your job, make the hard decision. Don't just wrap yourself in legal and security to say no. They just need to come in and say probability. We can't secure it as much as you'd hope. We need you now to make a really difficult decision. Innovate or reduce risk. It can't be both. You need to balance. Be smart. You need to lead the team. Just like, if you're a military commander in Ukraine, and all of a sudden I was never trained to deal with drones flying overhead. It's not like you go to 6 months of training and do drone combat defensive operations. No, you're dealing with the thing that's in front of you. You need to make decisions within minutes, hours over this new technology, not deal with it with some sort of training class that may or may not exist. what business leaders are doing in the US and around the world, you can't take the time to fully understand it. You just need to see what's in front of you, make hard decisions based off intelligence, everyone else feeding you information. You have to be your military commander. You have to make hard decisions, own your job, or step down. That's,
So let's back a little bit here, because I think what we sort of said is you need to play, you need to learn,
yes.
and you need to get people out there to play. But before they play, make sure they're wearing a helmet, make sure they know the rules of the road. You know, I would say, you know, like if that's why I like to say, take the analogy of play. When I learned to drive, my dad took me to a big parking lot on a Sunday.
Yes.
In those days, there was nobody in a parking lot. I could drive around fully. You could start to get the feel of the car. So because this thing's moving fast. But as a person who's involved actively in education and learning, where are the resources? What are the things they should be looking at to help them learn this?
Well, obviously SANS, and one of the reasons I'm really glad to be chief of research as a part of my job, but my focus is on AI. So I've pulled these two things together, pulling in the small number of experts that, I call them experts, saying they're fully vulnerable, saying, hey, we're learning too, and pulling together resources of what is currently known. We have enough understanding of how people are using AI in day jobs. So we're starting, there's massive parts of our courses that are now teaching to that. Same thing on how do we protect it. But again, the protect is what we currently know, and we have to iterate those protect classes as fast as possible. On the governance side, how does AI Act and GDPR, DORA all feed into AI implementations? So your understanding of the risk, so the business leaders can make these decisions. We have these summits that we do at SANS. And Alan Pollard, massive, had to depend on our founder who's no longer with us. He started the first ICS summit that said, hey, listen, we need to protect critical infrastructure. It's not like that was solved. He said, what are we going to do to this? Let's have a summit, bring in people who are kind of knowledgeable about this, Mike Asante, Tim Conway, eventually Robert Imley, to be able to have these core discussions. Like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? What is everyone doing? Have hard talks to have people talk about it, but again, iterate, then iterate, then iterate. It's research. It is coming together. It is community forming. It is, let's solve this together. That is the thing that SANS has stood on for over 25 years since I came in. They asked me, it's like, Rob, show us what you know in incident response. It's not like, well, I wrote the book. This appears exactly. I started, it wasn't an educational academic. Rob, what works? And I would give a talk. Like, okay, can you do that for 3 hours now? Do you have more material you could teach as tricks and things that, would help people? Like, well, here's what I figured out. That's why it's the practitioner coming in and doing this. They're sharing what they know, but that is not the solution. They're showing, here's what I currently know. And I did the work to be able to get here. And I'm more than happy to bring others along with me because we're all in this together. It's like, hey, did you know? Oh, I never even considered that. And you go try it yourself. You're like, oh, cool. That's amazing little technique for cooking. This is why SANS is a resource. You go on our website, sans.org/AI, we dropped everything in there. We currently have the AI critical controls, which was a consensus paper of 50 different individuals. We have a partnership with OWASP and OWASP AI Exchange on how to technically implement a lot of those controls and working together, community forming, experts coming together, implementing what our practitioners are finding right now. And it's still early days. It is not like these are all the solution. It is like, here's what our current knowledge, and we're basically 3 inches into what we're still staring as the ocean.
We started a group called Project Synapse. We started having coffee Friday mornings to talk about AI and what was happening.
Yeah.
It turned into one of our most popular shows now. And it started with 3 guys who were just sitting around, we're going to figure this out. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. Having access to some of the material, I think is great. You need to start reading again. But you've also got to talk to people and imagine things. I mean, when I wrote my book, I wanted to explore what the world was going to be like living with AI. And there's lots of great fiction out there. You can also start to use your imagination. That's something we don't talk about in business. Our imagination, our ability to play, and our ability to learn. I think those are really important.
I think it sounds like we are really starting to figure this out. Rob, you're speaking from authority on this. I say, what I'm speaking from authority on is learning journeys, how you become an expert, how you develop passion, and how you admit your own vulnerability. So one of the reasons I consider myself a leader in the field on this stuff now in AI is not because I have all the problems solved, is because I'm leading everyone to get in shape again, a new form of it. I have to do the work every day. I have to wake myself up and say, you have to do your AI homework. What is the AI homework? I don't know. I'm going to go online. How do you figure out what to learn? I said, great question. You know what I spend a lot of time doing? My entire feed on TikTok is AI people talking about AI things. When I'm looking at their, oh, that's interesting. And I pause, it leads to a YouTube video and I try to replicate what they're doing. And then I'm okay, cool. But my vulnerability is, listen, folks, I don't have all the answers. I cannot go down into every single thing on how to potentially prevent attack A or B. I haven't even done most of those things. I'm looking at it from the aspect of I need to be able to lead the industry. The only way I could do that is by starting to get off the couch and invest the time at micro learning environments to be able to get to the point saying, hey, Sands, we need to invest things over here because I think there's a thing here. But if you're not willing as an organization, as an individual, even to do that from an executive board and just admit your own vulnerability, that's what I think is very important for us as a beat. Even for you, this is the Thanksgiving discussion that's about to happen. Everyone's going to be talking about what they're doing. Are you using AI? What do you think? Is it a job killer? I don't honestly think it's going to be the politics that's going on in the country around Thanksgiving this year. I honestly think and predict people will be talking about AI, and is it scary?
Please, God, be right.
It's going to be
I'm such like,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm being invited in to talk to groups, and I find this fascinating. There's a small municipality just 2 hours from me wants me to come in and talk to their business community about the potential of AI and what they can. One of the things I want to circle back to this because it is an interesting concept and it's something that I think we need to learn, and it's difficult. We've had a real concept of leadership that says I know everything. I'm not going to make any mistake. I'm on top of all this stuff.
Yes.
I've got bright people who work for me. I think I was close to 50 years old before I realized I don't have to know everything.
Yeah.
I don't have to say I know everything. And I think you've talked about it as vulnerability. I think it's an important piece to say, wait a minute, I don't know everything about this. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in detail. I think that's a new mindset for executives in particular, and maybe for CISOs, because everybody says, oh, you've got to be on top of all this. No, I don't. This world is moving. We've never seen technology adopted this quickly. I mean, when you take a look at the telephone, how long did the telephone take till it became a business unit? When you take a look at computers, how long did computers really take before they were implemented? The web started 1990, like it was invented in the 80s, didn't really touch down till the 1990s, and took about 10 or 15 years to be put into. We have compressed this into weeks and months, and we're moving at a speed we've never moved before. If you honestly believe you're going to convince people that you know everything, good luck. You have to be able to
admit you're learning. If you are in charge of Ukraine defense and you see drones overhead, you'll turn to your smartest people in the room. What do you know about drones? Now, if they come out with like, here's what I know. They're sitting on that ledge. I guarantee the defensive commander is like, okay, seriously, you can tell me you actually know what's going on here. Have you ever flown a drone? No. Do you understand the mechanics? Have you used this in combat? Defense, offense? No. Someone find me anyone who's touched a drone in their life. And of course, someone comes in there as a hobbyist saying, I did it. And then all of a sudden that person said, what do you need for this thing? And they start saying, okay, we could do this too. It was some 20-year-old who flew a drone flying a camera around a house that became the military commander for, I'm guessing here, none of those generals in that room that know how to do combat, they relied on someone who was flying a drone around a home to sell that house. The same thing occurs when you end up taking a look at, Billy Mitchell, the first Aero Squadron way back, flew the plane. He's up there and like, okay, cool. We need a lot of these and we're going to form squadrons and we're going to do damage to everything. So they build a lot of planes and everyone's staring at the planes like, okay, do we have all the pilots that have graduated pilot training at this point to fly these things? There is no pilot training. No one knows how to fly these things. The only thing was we had someone slightly smarter by a week, maybe, getting in that cockpit with you and saying, okay, here's what I know, up, down, left, right, we'll figure it out, right? And then all of a sudden you have 40 people that are a week old flying planes in combat, never having done it before with no pilot training. Now, of course, all this stuff becomes formalized, everything behind the scenes, but you need that person that's a week older than you, just a week, maybe a month. That is, okay, here's a couple things that I have done. And these are called the AI champions in your organization. Now, my AI champion, everyone needs a Yoda. So my Yoda is a really good friend of mine, Kate Marshall. She worked with me at SANS, led the AI summit with me. She's about 6 months to a year, probably more, in implementing AI things. Now, she does not doing it for cybersecurity. She's just doing normal workflows and everything. But now Kate, ironically enough, is doing a business specifically on working with people on getting them up to AI speed. But she's my Yoda. I'll go to her and say, what about this? I need to talk through this. So it's not like I'm completely alone. I just am talking to someone who jumped in the aircraft maybe a week earlier than me. And anyone's on TikTok, they're flying through there and they're talking about AI things. I guarantee they just looked at that thing 3 days before and said, oh, I'm going to do a video about this because then it will look like I'm an expert in this. And it will look like they've been doing this for a year. But if you actually talk to them and say, when did you learn that before you filmed it? Oh, 3 days ago, 4 days ago. So how are you speaking with authority? It's like, I'm not. I'm just showing you what I did. I'm like, no, I've been doing cybersecurity for 25 years and I'm fully willing to say, hey, listen, just because it looks like I'm more of an expert than you, I've only been doing it a week. You could easily catch up to me and we could be working on this together. And that's my call to action for everyone in the industry. You're asked to do governance, you're asked to utilize it, and you're asked to protect things with it. And juggling 3 balls simultaneously, it's intimidating and you feel like you're being left behind. Go back into vulnerability mode, which is ask yourself, just tell people, it's like, okay, I just started learning. Well, what are you doing? Which learning class? I'm not. I just jumped in the plane and started, if I do this, do this. By the way, did you see what I did yesterday? If I pull back on the stick with enough speed, I was actually able to get the plane to do this thing. We'll just call it a loop. Who did the loop for the first time? There was no training for that. Who's the first person that did a roll? And then said, this is a brilliant idea without crashing the plane. It's not like that was part of the schematics that the plane was built with. It's all of a sudden they played with it enough, but then it became a thing that was trained. We need you to do the loops, the rolls. Hey, let's add a bomb to this. Let's add a machine gun to the front of it. And by the way, we need to shoot through the propellers. Someone has to figure this out. Someone has to be that 20-year-old drone operator that became the critical node in Ukraine's defense and offense. And we saw what they were able to do just recently.
I don't think we want to arm cybersecurity people.
Well, I mean, now it's just sticks.
If we take this, explore, learn, be vulnerable, stay ahead, find an advisor. How do we deal with our corporate world at the same time? Because we're faced with real things of, people are attacking us. People are doing things. We're back in the war room now, and in our corporate world. What should people be doing, or CISOs or cybersecurity people be doing in their day-to-day that would help them to understand and manage AI?
You need to move from a framework of no to Sunlight AI. You need to figure out a way to do a 55-45% split on yes versus no. Default answer to yes. How can we make it happen? Find those who are leaning forward into playing with AI to become AI champions in every part of the organization. So you could talk to them about how they're using the technologies. Because once you enable them a little bit, it's yes, yes, yes. It's not like blind yes. It's like, okay, let's do an experiment, monitored one. Can we sit down next to you, ask questions when you're doing it? We'll have a different perspective. But it's finding the 20-year-olds that are using it, maybe 40-year-old, it doesn't really matter. Someone who's flying their own personal drone around with a camera attached to it is like, hey, look what I did. And you sit down with them and said, okay, let me see, watch what you're doing. And can you show me, and can I start doing it? That champion in finance, in product, and HR is going to be utilizing in such a different way. You can't centralize it. You have to see how they're using it and then ask them questions like, how do you know you're not exposing things? And like, oh, it's easy. And they're like, oh, then you write that down. You solve it for your business. But the only way you're going to do this by learning experimentation, move to a framework of yes, Sunlight AI, and enablement. And you need to find those initial people flying the plane. And it's not only business enablement by doing this. Security teams could watch, monitor, and potentially assess. And it's like, okay, they're using it. Now, if they're using this, how can I protect what they're doing so they're allowed to continue to do this you have to learn by doing. The only thing you could enable that is potentially by monitoring. It's going to take effort. There's no books. SANS is leading on this space, and we show competency. It looks like we have all this thing. We're pulling in, like Alan Pollard did with the ICS, saying, how, as a community, do we help here? Myself as a leader is going back to the basic principles of what happened in 1995, 1 year after DEF CON. This is so brand new. The ping of death was a thing, and everyone's like, whoa, magic trick. Yeah, I could kill Windows machines with the ping of death. That wasn't the concern. We were dealing with, like Israeli hackers sitting in California, solar sunrise, and all the moonlight maze, and all these other major events that started to occur. And no one knew what they were doing. And everyone had to come together. The analogy that happened in the military back then is they formed a unit, Joint Task Force Computer Network Defense. Everyone in there is like, we don't have the book on this. We don't know what we're doing. That unit became Cyber Command 4 years later. And it's like the gestation of a bunch of people who are smart, who don't know what they're doing. Then they get training. Then they, teach capability like we did at SANS, like I did at SANS, without really knowing that what I'm starting to build is a curriculum and an academic capability that is training people to replicate, not just say, hey, here's what I did last night. Isn't that cool? It takes us to come together. So, core question, what do you do? Enable AI in a way that you could deploy your team, maybe assign a security personnel per team to sit with the AI champion to, hey, you're my battle buddy now. I watch what you're doing. I will ask you questions. But if you go back to the typical model, centralization and then deployment, you will fail. You need to sit next to people who are doing the experiments, who are playing, and you need the cybersecurity people probably to watch them replicate what they're doing to get you thinking. But you also need to potentially, we need someone on your team also figure out how do you do AI with cybersecurity. The protect people need to look at how people are using AI and their function to protect them. And it's different in finance than it is in HR, than it is in product. So it's hard, but it takes redeployment of security resources.
Yeah. As an example, when I was CIO of the last company, I gave it up to become a podcaster and make all this money. The idea of, I would sit down with people and say, if you want to try this out, don't use our customer data. I can get you a data set to play with. And I think maybe that's a really great idea, is if you're out there and engage with people, you can help them explore without risking the company.
Yeah.
Because I think that's been a big thing. Left to their own devices, I can guarantee you they won't think about these things. Well,
yeah, it's like someone sitting on the playground, and you could watch the group a little bit, but just assign secured personnel per team to watch the playing on the playground and to say, oh, maybe we need to put some sort of padding underneath that thing. AI is going to require a restructuring of your team as security personnel, maybe even hiring folks that will be sitting side by side in every single one of those units. And even in the military, they have a safety officer in every single unit that says, here's what I need. It's not like single safety officer in the Air Force, Army, it was like, here's our policy universally. They need to see what that unit's doing to potentially implement what the safety protocols are for that specific unit.
Okay. And as we wrap up, I'm gonna do what I think a lot of cybersecurity professionals would do. They're hearing this conversation going, you guys are a little,
oh no, totally.
You're a little airy-fairy here, guys. Okay, now I gotta face the reality. I got threats that are coming at me. I've got prompt injection. I've got all this stuff happening in my real world. You guys have a nice Saturday morning chat. What am I supposed to do practically to survive? What would you say to them?
Realize that the only way to learn is by joining the community. Attend, and I'll say we're doing summits at SANS. I have an AI summit that is happening in April, but we have over 50 hours of AI summit material from the past 3 years. We did our first AI summit 6 months after ChatGPT was released. Ton of material out there. You could go absorb that. And even using AI to load them into, because they're just YouTube videos, you could load them all into a notebook LLM and ask it questions. Experts basically tapping brain power around the world now. Ask these questions to you. That is one way. It's like you have to engage the community, jump and join the AI exchange. And no one's going to say, hey, you're writing the policy for EU AI Act, but they had to start somewhere too. And you sit around the smart people, find a Yoda, not just a person that is like, hey, I have it down for cybersecurity, but probably it's even better, find someone who's your Yoda that's just out there in the field doing cool AI things, because a trick that they figured out for product may be a trick and technique that you could immediately apply to a cybersecurity process and workflow you're working with. So it's a combination of someone's going to save you. Here's your policy guideline download template that you do, and here's A, B, and C that you do in this regard. 1, join the community. 2, start tapping into resources and pulling people in with you that are saying, hey, we're learning this. SANS has a massive amount of resources and things you could digest. We have the critical AI controls. We have the blueprint, which is something I came up with those 3 pillars: govern, utilize, protect, because organizations literally come in. It's like, we need AI security. And I asked our team, is like, well, what kind? And they're just like, no, I was just told we need AI security. But I find it, no, it's really AI governance is what they're seeking. Well, that's a single set of classes that we have that basically will say, here's what we currently know about the way people are interpreting DORA as it applies to AI. The classes that we do have, like in security operations, those might be a full day of material integrating AI workflows, what they currently know. We have a brand new class that's out there. Literally the entire class is focused on workflows. So some of this stuff is current knowledge, what we're currently teaching, but we don't have it all solved. Then on the protect side, so all 3 pillars are ways you potentially figure out which pillar you need to sit in to become the expert in. Probably not all 3. Be the protect person, be the utilize person, or be the governance person, and then tell the organization, I'm going to learn this better than anyone else, but I'm going to go join those communities, including SANS, that seem to be leading with the more competency, but not the point where you're saying, hey, it's blind trust. We need you to join the conversation and realize that it's our responsibility to protect your family, our organizations, and our nation.
Fabulous, sir. Last words for our audience? Anything you want to leave people with as we let them go for the day?
I really want to know what your book title is again, and where I could purchase that. I mean, last words are, I go back to that. That's sinking in my mind. Is like always fascinating when someone on the technical side ends up writing a book. So what's your book?
Always glad to plug my book, Elissa, A Tale of Quantum Kisses. It's an exploration of our life in the very near future in terms of AI and how we might coexist with a superior intelligence. It's a lot of fun. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. The audiobook came out this week, so you can get that everywhere you can get audiobooks. I've discovered a lot of people don't read anymore. Everybody's listening to audiobooks while they're doing the dishes, washing.
Or podcasts,
Or podcasts.
Please, you're still being with us on this podcast. Well done. Send me an email saying I listened to the entire thing. I'll get 2 emails.
There you go. Well, on this one, you probably get, there's good 10,000 people listen to this.
I'm hoping. I mean, you never know. I'm trying, like, I think it's up to us. You doing this, me talking about this. Now you're going to talk about this. We have 10 people come off this, talk about this, and they're going to become vulnerable, and they're going to rationalize and say, oh, I'm going to go into my team and say, hey guys, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to start learning this. We all need to be in this together. We're in that foxhole, all scared. But if we work together, that's the way we get through this. And we're going to be able to protect our families. And, I say that this is one technology that is permeating down to that level. And that's why it's going to be a Thanksgiving discussion, is that you need to potentially internalize what we're talking about and start leading your own teams and expressing those, hey, I don't have all the solutions. It's more even than that. It's like, I am now in kindergarten again, and I'm learning a brand new language, and I need to get, very simple CTIC run, DJ and jump.
To tell you, if that crazy old uncle that attends all of your Thanksgiving dinners is now showing you how he can edit photos on Google instead of talking politics, we've done our
Nano banana, my friend. Yes.
Nano banana. Yep. My guest today has been Robert T. Lee. He's the Chief AI Officer and Chief of Research at the SANS Institute. Thank you very much, sir. Glad to have had you for this chat.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here and happy to come back and talk about how things are going.
Great. And if you've stayed with us this long, bless you. If you want to find out more about AI, I'm going to tell Rob to send me some links and I'll put those with the show notes. I eventually get the show notes up there at technewsday.com, our regular site, so you can find them there. And I'll put some links up there. I'll put a link to the book. And if you're really interested to sit down discussions, every Friday we have Project Synapse, and most of the time we broadcast those as a podcast on #trending, our sister podcast. And you can hear three of us stumbling through what's happening in a week in AI.
That's exactly what needs to happen. A lot of stumbling. I love it.
Thank you very much. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a great weekend.